Reserve. Apparently, these four Rothschild brothers, who had domineered control over the family financial systems before World War I, had also acquired advisory committees both to England and the United States to establish power after World War II and up through the current 20th century into matters such as the privatization of British coal and the other resource faculties of England, and has a main control right now over the United States loaning institution that we know as the Federal Reserve. So this family that originated in the 1750s under a man named Andrew Weisskopf, under the auspices of the Bank of England, that had transformed itself many times, now we know as the Federal Reserve of the United States. So anyway, the same financial pyramid seems to be in control of the power structure of the media organizations in the Western world too, as a capstone in England to disperse all the information that we get here under the auspices of institutions like NBC News, ABC News, CBS Networks, and etc. They basically aren't out there attaining or acquiring news. I mean, we see what happens in the city when we walk around. They're sitting in their vans. They're waiting for the wire to come to them. They have the fancy vans out there with the big satellites to receive the news, just like we do from our living rooms to receive the news. I mean, they're just receiving the news the same way. The news has begun the same way that I can begin a story or a joke and just start telling it. That's the same way the news has begun. I mean, they're making news next door to the same place that they're making Godzilla in, like, movie studios and, Hollywood shebangs with guys in suits and lights and makeup and wardrobe people. The smoke screen is in full effect when you watch the news. I mean, all the tricks and glamour come out more so than in Hollywood, because it's very much more important that you believe the news than you believe E.T. That's a whole different thing, but the news is supposed to be fact. It's basically fiction presented as fact. And if I'm out here with a headband on without a fancy suit, it's not news. But if I was in front of a big facade with a suit and tie on, this could potentially be news. If I had a NBC microphone and everything was legitimate, then you guys would believe everything I'm saying. I could say that the world was falling down, and if it was on NBC News, everybody would believe it. But we all know that this is not new. I'm not giving you anything new here. This is just how the media operates. But the hierarchical pyramid of the media operates in the sense that these vans are out there waiting for news that is begun or spun, or whatever words you want to use, created, initialized, in an office, in a download. When they gather some pictures, they create a story around the pictures, and they stick it out there, and they give it to the news vans, and then the news vans make a broadcast. A 3-week-old news story all of a sudden breaks one day, 3 weeks later. It's not because some savvy journalist is out there cracking a news story, it's because the people that control the news and the dissemination of the news decided that today's the day we're going to say this story, because either for lack of better stories or because it serves a purpose, particularly that day, to either soften the blow to the story the next day or to harden the blow from the story that was the previous day. I mean, the succession of news stories, the carefully placed succession, that is not a day-to-day development. I mean, the succession of news stories is carefully planned months ahead of time. That's why news from a month ago comes out in tomorrow's news, everywhere on the planet, because they've all got the same news pool that they're fishing from that they got access to on that particular day. So they have a choice between A, B, or C story that goes down the wire that day into the talkabout, and they put their political spin on any one of those three stories. And they chuck it out there in newspapers and magazines and TV shows and whatnot to give us things to talk about, because if the media organizations control the flow of information, they also control the flow of communication, which means if they put on the front of the news today that the Gaza Strip was invaded, or that, Babe Ruth hit his 1,000th home run, then that's what America's going to talk about today, the home run or the Gaza Strip. So the wizards or the sorcerers out there that decide on what we're going to talk about, they throw into the news pool what they want us to talk about that day, and in effect, completely manipulate what we're communicating about, and in retrospect, and as a byproduct of that, completely manipulate